Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, it is day 14 of RPG A Day 2018, and our question or prompt for today is describe a failure that became amazing. And when I read this one thing, and this one's going to be kind of tough. Which one will I choose? Was there anything that really stood out? All that kind of stuff. And I'll tell you what's not amazing or awesome or great is when we have a failure to communicate. What we have here is a failure to communicate. And one of the neat things about RPG A Day is, when your friends participate, whether they blog or tweet or make YouTube videos or Facebook videos or write Facebook posts or whatever, as they express themselves, you start to see things that you didn't see in your actual conversations with each other. I'm not sure why that is, but I've noticed with at least a couple of friends, like, we've had some failures to communicate. There are things that I've missed about their intentions for gaming, and I want to go back and have some discussions with them. Just like I was talking about the video before, one of the neat things that happens as we become, mature and responsible gamers is we start to, understand the other person's perspective or want to understand that. And one of the mistakes we can make as game masters, innocently, I think, is we end up producing this experience that we would like as a player. And sometimes the players, well, they want something different, and we just have had this kind of failure to communicate. But this video isn't about that, and I've already blathered on for like a minute, almost a minute and a half. So, I like failure. Not like I go out looking for it, but I believe it adds interest to the game. Because all failure really is you intended to do something, and it didn't work. There's a game that I've been reading lately. A friend of mine said, hey, you know what, this was very well written. And it's a game I've had for a long time on PDF, and I just never actually got around to reading it. I think I read a few pages, and I was kind of on like RPG overload, so I just kind of put it down and wanted to pick it back up and just hadn't for months. I went back and I read it, and it's very well written. I agree, it really presents itself very, very well. It's never going to be one of my favorite games, and I'll tell you why. Because there's parts of this game that talk about the idea that these characters are hyper competent at certain things, and when they do these things, they simply are not going to fail. Or it's very, very unlikely. And, it's not a bad game. But, to me, part of the things that make RPGs interesting, what makes this hobby interesting, are those moments where you really intend to do something and it just does not work out, and the game takes a left turn. I understand what people mean when they say, like, when you do something, you shouldn't just fail, something else should happen. Anything but nothing happens, and I get that. But for me, the idea is just because you couldn't open that door, metaphorically, another door opens. There's another possibility, no matter how it actually gets expressed. So I really dig failure. I like when games are unpredictable. I like when the unexpected happens on all sides. So I'll give you a couple of them that really stood out for me, and one is kind of silly, and one is serious and much more amazing or awesome. And we're really just scratching the surface. We've just kind of, we're trying to find out what's going on with this particular failure. The first one I've talked about, I probably talked about both of them actually, but I talked about, I might have even mentioned it in last year's RPG A Day, so forgive me if I did. But I was playing in a kind of a pickup game with Jason, and he played ran some Iron Falcon, which was a clone of Greyhawk, old school D&D type stuff. And so we get together, and I knew it was probably going to be a little lighthearted because we're just running a module, we're just trying the system out and everything. And so I had two failures really that happened. But the first one is rolling up a character. Roll up a character, 3 wisdom. That's abysmal, as bad as it could possibly get. This guy has no freaking common sense. So I rolled up another character. I said, listen, Jason, I rolled this guy with a 3 wisdom. Can we bring him along as a torchbearer? Do you mind if I just use this other character? This other character isn't awesome either. Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Bring him along as a torchbearer. We get to finally, after maneuvering around, and figuring some stuff out, through intelligence gathering, we get to the door of the dungeon. We knew it was going to be a dungeon crawl, and we open the door, and instantly we get attacked by some goblins. And so it's time to roll initiative, right? Roll initiative. And so I roll. I fail. It was a failure. I failed to win the initiative. And the very first thing that happened as my character opened the dungeon door was a goblin and killed me. Awesome. And Dim, the torchbearer, I took over that character, and then that character eventually died as well. But like he, avenged his brother, so to speak, or avenged his master. And very lighthearted, very funny. You know what? It's one of those events that we'll never forget because it was just awesome. And this story became about this dim-witted guy, you know, running through this underground warren of evil and foul beasts trying to avenge his master, which is silly but fun. But that's not the amazing one I'm going to talk about. The real amazing one occurred in our all-for-one Regime Diabolique game. And we've had a bunch of failures in that game. But in our last session, not the session where we all got together and talked, in the little GM list session, but in our last session that Anthony ran, we got into this bit of trouble with this vampire. And Briscoe had gotten kind of duped by this vampire. And Philippe sees that, you know, clearly his friend is in trouble. He runs after this carriage. He you know, jumps on it. He fails miserably to really defeat this other vampire that's driving the carriage. The carriage spills over. Things go very, very badly. You know, Francois, you know, Briscoe is having some tremendous failures with this vampire as well. So we pretty much get trounced by these creatures of the night. And also at that point, the vampires reveal that they have taken Eugenie prisoner, and they start levitating her up. And things always go bad in all-for-one Regime Diabolique when things start levitating. There's, you know, if you go back and watch those games, that's always a bad thing. But there's this moment when Philippe tries to grab Eugenie and, you know, wrest her away from the vampire, because I'm thinking at this point, well, maybe we can make a break for it. And I fail. At this point, I'm completely at the vampire's mercy. And what do I do at this point? Because I care about Briscoe, because I care about Eugene, because Philippe cares about these people, and so do I. I make a deal with this vampire. I become willing to talk. And as it stands right now, we are kind of, or at least Philippe is sort of, working for this vampire, you know, helping her exact revenge against these other evil people. And I'm caught right in the middle of this, between a rock and a hard place. And it was one of those great moments. Did I want that to happen? No, I wanted to rescue the damsel in distress and my friend and get the heck out of there, right? But instead, what actually happened was I failed. And it's made the game much more interesting. And so, pretty amazing, pretty awesome. You know, is it really what my character wants? No. It puts us in this incredibly difficult predicament. And we still have to go back and play and find out exactly what that's going to entail and what that's going to mean. You know? But, you know, it made the game much more rich and interesting than if I had succeeded and we had gotten away. So that's going to be my failure that became amazing. How about that? Talk to you tomorrow, kids.